this is Zach, also known as the kid that tigs. I know I promised you guys that I'd do a how-to video the weekend before last weekend, but I ended up not getting around to it because I've been really busy at work and I just really haven't had any time for side work. So I was like, you know what? They've been asking for another video, so what I'm gonna do today is I'm just gonna tell you guys how I started, the way I started, and my journey on how I got to where I am today. So, where do I even start? Well, first of all, my dad's a welder. That's the main part about it. Um, when we were really little, my dad really pushed for us to go to college and not really, he didn't really want us to weld. He wanted us to have an easy life, and he didn't want us to go through what he has to go through and all that. So he'd always push us to go to college, and like they had like a savings account for our college and all that. And so when I was about 11 was the first time my dad actually brought us out to the farm, and we actually MIG welded these signs. They actually don't look that good at all. Like, I still have them. And that was the first time I actually welded. I know I tell people, oh yeah, I started 4 years ago, but the first time I actually welded was 11. But I stopped welding for a solid 6 years after that day. Like, I didn't even touch a welder at all for a while. Well, then when high school came around, freshman year, I didn't even take a metals class at all. I was actually in Intro to Tech and Engineering for my elective. And then my sophomore year came around, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take a metals class since my dad welds and all that. And like, I always hear like good things about it. So I ended up going in there, and we'd always MIG, like the first thing we do is MIG weld and all that. And like, I knew a lot about it because my dad did it, and like he talked to us about it all the time. So I'd like have a little bit more knowledge than the average class or student, and which helped me out a little bit. But I'd always want to MIG weld. I'd always be like, hey dad, can we like MIG weld? He's like, I got the TIG welder set up. We can TIG or do stick. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to MIG weld. And he's like, that's easy stuff. Like, why do you want to do that? Like, you want to learn how to do the hard stuff so you get paid more money. And I'm like, okay. So then we did TIG. Well, or did stick, not TIG. And then we ended up in the middle of my sophomore year of high school. We have a metals 1, 2, and 3 that you have to go through. And I was in metals 1, and the metals 3 class actually won a Skills USA competition with a table. And I was like, hey, Mr. Anderson, like, how did they weld that? And he's like, TIG weld. And I'm like, what's that? Like, what's TIG welding? And so he's like, it's this or whatever. We use these machines. Like, you can also use them as stick and all that. And I was like, okay. And he's like, you can do aluminum, carbon, stainless, titanium, all that. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. He's like, yeah, you can do a lot of that stuff with it. And he's like, but it's the hardest process to learn. And I'm like, I kind of want to learn that. And so the next day, me and my buddy Josh, we're like, hey, Mr. Anderson, can we like try out the TIG welder? And he's like, sure. So we tried it out. My filler rod literally globbed up. Like, I didn't even know I had to have a puddle to even dab my filler rod on the thing, on the like on the coupon. So I was like, Mr. Anderson, what am I doing wrong? Like, how do I do this? Like, and then he sat down in the booth. He showed us the basics. Like, he literally ran one bead, and I'm like, oh, you have to have a puddle to actually lay a bead. Okay. So me and my friend Josh would compete. Like, we'd always be like, oh, I'm better than you. And then he'd be like, you're better than me, and blah, blah, blah. And then we'd always like learn off of each other. Like, we'd always be like, how did you get that? Or he'd be like, how did you get that to me? And for my first about year and a half, 2 years, I did aluminum TIG. All I did was aluminum TIG for straight. Like, I never did anything else unless it was MIG welding. And then my teacher saw I was getting pretty good at it, so he ended up having me weld majority of the projects in the class. So then he was like, Zach, you're getting pretty good. So they ended up putting me in Skills USA competitions, but I sucked at stick welding. So I ended up not really doing too well in the whole competition thingy, whatever you call it. So I ended up like I did decent, but I didn't do good. And so we ended up doing that, and then he's like, you can like get college credit for welding, and because like we don't offer actually welding in school, we offer metals, and you can actually take welding after school. So my beginning of my senior year of high school, I started taking. I went to college from 4 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night every day of the week, right after high school. So I went from pretty much, here's how it worked. I literally woke up, went to high school at like I got to high school at like 7:30, went there, then drove or at like 2:45 I drove from high school to college, which was like a 40-50 minute drive, and I went there obviously from 4 to 10, and then I did that 5 days a week. It's a show box. I show cattle and all that, and it's all aluminum. It was like 200 feet of aluminum TIG welding. And I was kind of doubting myself on making it, but I was like, you know what? It's my last year. It's my senior year project. Why not do it? So I did it, and my welds before compared to after changed drastically. Like it was crazy how much like hood time changed me in that amount of time, and so that helped me like read a puddle and all that. And what I'm trying to say is that hood time really helps out a lot. It really does. And then I ended up like this is like right once I started my metals, I ended up leaving a job. Like circumstances happened at a job that I was at before, so my dad ended up getting me into where I'm at right now. Well, I was literally just a maintenance, like I don't know what you call it, like maintenance helper, I guess. I was gonna say something else, but I don't know if they like that. And I pretty much swept floors, grinded pipes, did rolled up wires. Like I pushed around a welder, and then after a while, my dad ended up having surgery. I ended up having to help him. So after that happened, I was his hole watch. Like I was his fire watch. I ended up grinding his pipes, beveling his pipes for him, and he just welded. Like that's all he did. And I was literally his helper for like a year and a half. They ended up having me go in the tank with my boss, because my boss was welding alongside my dad at the time, one of my bosses, and because I had to help him hold up baffles and he tack them and all that, and I'm like, okay. And then my boss is like, you wanna weld once or whatever, and I'm like, sure. Well, then I ended up welding, and my boss was actually baffled by like how like good I actually was. So he ended up starting to let me weld pipe and all that and fit pipe, and I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. My welds sucked. Like you think you're good like at school or um like welding at college. You think you're all that, like even if you're good, and then you get out in the like welding pipe and all that, and it's a totally different story. Like it's a totally different story. So I ended up doing that, and then this was about 2 years ago now. 2 years ago I started pretty much pipe welding. Tricks help out a lot. Like welding tricks help out a lot, and like hood time teaches you those tricks. Like I've put so many hours underneath the hood because they have me welding all day long. Like I literally get to work, I weld all day long now, and I've ran miles of pipe, miles of stainless pipe, and that's what helped me out a lot. And like nothing, like no weld is ever good enough. Like I always am like, I can do better than that. I can do better than that. And I think that's like what made me who I am today, is because I just keep pushing myself, because I'm never I'm satisfied with my welds, but like I'm never completely satisfied to where I'm like I just I stop trying to progress myself. You know what I'm saying? Like I just it's I don't know, I just push myself all the time because I know I can do better, and I want to be perfect and all that. And even though that's never going to happen, I didn't even want to be a welder. I actually wanted to go to school to major in physics or major in some type of math degree. And mostly because I was really good at math and science, and I loved it. I love math and science. I sucked at reading and English, and I I ended up my ACT score didn't really match up with my um, GPA to where so then I could get into UW-Madison because that's where I really wanted to go, and a lot of people are telling me a lot of people are telling me you're already good at this and they pay really good and you like it, so why don't you do that? So I ended up just welding, and to be honest, I'm happy where I'm at. I love what I do, and I wouldn't really want to be anywhere else right now. And so yeah, I love what I do, and I wouldn't change how I got here a single bit. So